18 months ago, I had $450 in my checking account 4 days before payday, and I genuinely believed I'd never be a person who saves real money. Not because I didn't want to, because I'd tried this exact thing before, more than once, and it never held. I'd get to a few $100s, something would come up, and I'd be back near zero within a month. It happened enough times that I'd started to think the problem was something broken in me, not in the math. I was wrong, just not in the way I expected. I didn't get a raise this year and a half. I didn't pick up a second job or move in with family to cut my expenses. I made the same $60,000 salary the entire time. The exact same number on the exact same paycheck I had the day I had $450 to my name. 18 months later, I had just over $15,000 sitting in an account I genuinely hadn't touched. Here's the strange part. That $15,000 isn't the result of one big decision. It's the result of one specific thing I figured out about 2.5 months in, and everything after that point worked because of it. It wasn't a budgeting app, it wasn't a spreadsheet I white-knuckled my way through. It definitely wasn't cutting out anything I actually enjoyed. I want to walk you through exactly how it went, mistakes included. Because I think just save more fails almost everyone for the same reason it failed me twice before it finally worked. My take-home on $60,000 comes out to a little under $3,925 a month. The first time I tried to fix this, I did what every article tells you to do. Picked a percentage and committed hard to it. I went with 38%, which meant moving $1,492 into savings the day my first paycheck landed. I felt genuinely proud of myself that day, the kind of proud where you think the hard part is already over. 11 days later, I transferred $892 of it back into checking, because rent came out on the 1st and my paycheck didn't land until the 15th, which meant I was always covering the current month with money from the month before. I didn't know that gap existed until I was already stuck inside it. That left me with $600 actually saved from a month I'd planned to save $1,492 in. The second month, I tried again. Same $1,492. 9 days in, my renter's insurance renewed, a bill I'd completely forgotten to plan for, and I pulled back $992 to cover it. Net saved that month, $500. 2 months in, I had $1,100 saved against a target of almost $3,000. It felt like failing at the exact thing I'd already failed at, except this time I'd had an actual plan and it still hadn't held, which was almost worse than not having a plan at all. Here's what I didn't understand yet, and it's the entire reason those first 2 months went the way they did. I was trying to save a percentage of an income whose shape I didn't actually know. I knew the total. I had no idea when money left relative to when it arrived. So the third month, instead of trying the percentage again, and instead of trying a smaller percentage, which is what I assumed the fix would be, I did something that felt almost embarrassingly basic. The kind of thing I'd avoided because it felt tedious, not because it felt hard. I wrote down the exact date every recurring bill left my account, next to the exact date my paycheck landed. Rent on the 1st, paycheck on the 15th and the 30th, renter's insurance on the 9th, phone bill on the 23rd. What it revealed was a stretch, roughly the 1st through the 13th, where I was almost always tight because rent had just gone out and the next paycheck hadn't arrived yet. Every attempt I'd made had quietly collapsed inside that exact window, because I kept scheduling transfers on days I didn't actually have room to spare. I wasn't undisciplined, I was mistimed. That mapping month didn't add a single dollar to savings, and it took me 2 failed attempts at nearly 40% to even think to try it. It's the reason every month after it actually worked. Here's what changed. Instead of one transfer on one arbitrary date, I split it to match my paycheck schedule. Money out of the 15th paycheck the day it landed, before it sat in checking long enough to feel spendable, and the same again out of the 30th. And I picked a number that had nothing to do with the 38% I'd already proven I couldn't sustain. I went with 20%, $785 a month, lower than what I'd already failed at twice by a wide margin, which felt almost like giving up when I said it. But it survived every single month instead of surviving 11 days. 3 months at $785 is $2,355. Combined with the $1,100 from the false starts, I was sitting at $3,455 by month 6. Around that same stretch, my streaming bundle quietly raised its price by $9 a month. I didn't catch it for 6 weeks. The system didn't care. The transfer still went out on the same 2 days, and something smaller elsewhere just absorbed it without me managing anything consciously. That was the first sign this version might actually be different from every version before it. A little after that, I did something I'd been avoiding because I assumed I already knew where my money went. I went through 3 months of statements line by line. I found $24 a month in a subscription I'd completely forgotten, a trial I never canceled 2 years earlier. I found I was averaging $260 a month on delivery apps, which I'd mentally filed as occasional but was actually happening 3 to 4 times a week. I found I'd been letting a shopping app reorder small things I didn't need, $166 a month in things I couldn't have named a single one of a week later. None of it felt like catching myself doing anything dramatic. That's exactly what made it easy to miss for over a year. Total found money, $370 a month, sitting in one uncomfortable afternoon with my statements open in front of me. I hadn't earned a single extra dollar. I just stopped losing $370 a month to defaults nobody had actively chosen. With that found, I raised the transfer from 20% to 24%, $942 a month, still split across both paychecks the same way. I left some of the found money sitting in checking on purpose, because the whole point of the system was that it had to survive contact with real life, not just look clean on paper. 3 months at $942 is $2,826. That put me at $6,281 by month 9. Something else happened during this stretch that I hadn't planned for. Once the transfer was automatic and checking had less sitting in it than I was used to, I noticed I was making fewer small discretionary purchases without trying to. Not white-knuckled restraint. There just wasn't a comfortable cushion inviting me to spend it anymore. The account I actually looked at day to day simply had less room in it, and the decisions that used to happen on autopilot started happening less on their own. Then came the actual test. A dental bill I hadn't budgeted for, $600 all at once, the exact kind of expense that had wiped out every attempt I'd made before this. I remember the specific dread of hearing the number over the phone, waiting for it to undo everything the way it always had before. I paid it straight from savings. Balance dropped from $6,281 to $5,681. And I felt almost nothing. No scrambling, no card, just a lower number and a bill that was handled. That moment convinced me more than any of the math around it that this attempt was actually different. Every prior version of me had treated an unplanned expense as proof the whole plan was broken. This time, it was just a Tuesday. The next 4 months were, honestly, boring. No new discovery, no new system, just $1,099 a month landing automatically on the same 2 days. One final raise to 28% I made once and then never touched again. Balance climbed from $5,681 to just over $10,000. There's a specific temptation, once something is finally working, to start second-guessing whether you should be doing more with it, optimizing it, moving it somewhere fancier. I felt that more than once in this stretch and didn't act on it. The 5 months after that followed the exact same pattern. No changes, no new tricks, same $1,099, landing on the same 2 days. Balance went from $10,077 to just over $15,000. If I'm honest, those were the months I almost quit. Not because anything was going wrong, but because nothing was going on at all, and it's strangely hard to stay committed to a plan that stopped giving you anything to react to. Looking back, the hardest stretch of the whole 18 months wasn't the dental bill. It was those quiet middle months, the ones where nothing was happening, and it would have been easy to convince myself the plan needed something new to stay interesting. Every earlier attempt of mine hadn't failed during a crisis. It failed during a stretch exactly like that one, where I got bored and changed something before it had the chance to just keep working. 18 months after I started with $450 and a real history of failing at this exact goal, I'd crossed $15,000. It didn't feel triumphant exactly. It felt more like quiet relief. The specific kind that comes from finally trusting yourself with something you doubted for years. Here's the full math, laid out plainly, because I think it matters more than the story around it. 2 false start months, $1,100. 1 mapping month that added nothing but changed everything after it, $0. 3 months at $785, $2,355. 3 months at $942. After finding $370 a month in forgotten spending, $2,826. a $600 dental emergency that didn't reset the clock, 9 final months at $1,099, $9,891. Total, just over $15,000 on the same $60,000 salary I had the entire time. I didn't get a raise. I still went out with friends. I still ordered delivery, just far less. I didn't start a side hustle or sell anything. The entire difference between the version of me with $450 and the version of me with $15,000 comes down to a handful of specific, unglamorous, mechanical decisions. Understanding the actual timing of my cash flow instead of guessing at it. Automating transfers the same day money landed instead of hoping I'd remember. Going through my real spending once instead of assuming I already knew it. And then doing absolutely nothing dramatic for months at a stretch once there was nothing left to fix. So, if you want to actually use this instead of just watching it, this week, write down the exact date every bill leaves your account next to the exact date your paycheck lands. Not a budget, just a calendar. That single step is what took me 2 failed attempts to find. And it's the reason every version before it fell apart. This month, set up one automatic transfer timed to your paycheck date, not an arbitrary day of the month, at an amount low enough to actually survive contact with your bills. Lower and consistent beats higher and abandoned within 2 weeks, every single time. In the next couple of months, go through your actual statements line by line, looking specifically for the small recurring charges that used to be conscious choices and quietly became invisible defaults. And when an emergency happens, because it will, let the money you've built absorb it without treating the withdrawal as a proof the whole plan failed. The plan isn't broken because you used it for exactly what it was built for. I had $450 and a history of failing at this exact goal. On the same salary, I had over $15,000. The difference wasn't willpower. It was a handful of boring, mechanical decisions made once that kept working long after I stopped thinking about them every day.